A Ukrainian proverb says, "You don't really see the world if you only look through your own window." At the Alla Rogers Gallery, our next speaker provided windows into Eastern Europe for over 30 years. An artist herself, she exhibited in Kiev at the National Fine Art Museum of Ukraine. Since closing her gallery, she consults in collection building appraisals and cultural tourism. Fluent in Russian and Ukrainian, she helps developing democracies use art education for humanitarian goals. Please welcome artist and curator Alla Rogers and her RoundTable panelists.
Thank you, Michael. I'm honored to be here today with my wonderful guests who were impaneled for this year's Peace Education Day 2022. Today, our panel will explore the power and the impact of the arts and culture on peacemaking, building bridges of connection as components of peace education and a recognition of our shared humanity. I'm Alla Rogers, and I will serve as the moderator. And I myself have more than 30 years of experience as a gallerist, as a curator of art exhibitions, and organizer of art initiatives. And I was focused primarily on the countries of the former Soviet Union, a year before its official collapse. I'm also a working artist, and in my abstract paintings and drawings, I like and express my own deep personal desire to be in peace, in tranquility, in balance, in harmony. And my artwork suggests that the banal and the routine of life coexists with the sublime. And so my paintings and drawings try to express those feelings. And there are two paintings that will be documented in our presentation. One is called Above the Throng, and that speaks to the banal and the sublime together. And the other is One Love, which is about the life force that animates our entire universe, and my deep conviction that that force connects everything. And so with that, we will begin our panel. And so our first question is going to give us a kind of general overview. So my first question, and we'll begin with Mel, and we will go around the panel, then to Sarah, then to Richard, and then to Lucian, is how can the work that you do in the realm of arts and culture help promote and educate others about peace and peace building in the broadest understanding of that? Today, I have some distinguished guests with me, and I'd like to begin by introducing them one by one. And I'll begin with Melvin Hardy. Melvin is an art and peace activist, as well as an educator, and he uses many channels to live his activism. And one that is especially beloved is the Millennium Arts Salon, which is based in Washington, D.C. Please, Mel, begin.
Thank you very much, Alla, for having me on this panel. I delight in being listed as part of the faculty for Peace Education Day, which actually occurs before International Peace Day. The matter of the arts, culture, and I also add the humanities, is the lens by which I see the world. In my own experience, even though I come out of Columbia School of International Affairs, over a lifetime of work and professional career, the arts, culture, and the humanities has really captured the way that I have integrated life experience to what I consider to be my activism. I'm principally known as a nuclear weapons abolitionist. That means that I'm associated with the United Nations Office of Disarmament Affairs and the matter of peace building. That is the safety of all humans in the face of the devastation that might be wrought from the threat of nuclear weapons is a matter of great concern to me. I've been in the field a long time. And a lot of it is catalyzed by this ministry that I have been honored to participate in at All Souls Church, which hosts and housed what are called the Hiroshima Children's Drawings. This year, the Hiroshima Children's Drawings will be married to Jacob Lawrence's Hiroshima series, which opens in August at the Phillips Collection. And that is during the time of the United Nations Non-Proliferation Treaty talks and will run through the fall. So these are matters that I think allow my opportunity to engage in education for peace, consistent with the United Nations disarmament education, peace education as a new literacy. And to that extent, I am anxious to lever the role of the arts to educate more people about peace building, in this case, through artworks that would lift the matter of Hiroshima and advancing a world free from nuclear weapons. So thank you, Alla, for that question.
Next, I'm so glad to welcome Sarah Tanguy to our panel today. She is a curator and writer among many of her accomplishments, and she was a guiding force for the US State Department's Arts in the Embassies program until her recent retirement. And now she is extremely busy as an independent curator.
I want to start by giving a little bit of background about myself. I'm the daughter of a US diplomat, so I spent my early life toggling between living in the United States and all over the planet in various countries. And I think that experience instilled in me a sense of curiosity that just keeps on giving. And I'm always eager to learn about new peoples and cultures. I have developed a sense of being able to put myself in another person's shoes. And I think a lot in terms, maybe the most important aspect in terms of peace education is learning how to listen before opening your mouth. And I think that can go a long ways in terms of avoiding conflict or getting out of conflict, taking a step back and listening to whoever you are engaged with. In my professional career as a curator and arts writer, I see my roles primarily as mediator and energizer. And my art projects themselves, in them, I seek to promote mutual understanding and respect through collaborations with artists whose work transcends barriers, builds bridges, develops empathy, heals trauma, educates and inspires general audiences, and above all, creates connections across cultures.
Next, I would like to introduce Richard Dana, who is intrigued and fascinated by digital technologies and how they can be applied to the art that he makes. And he's also the director of an international artist collective called Take Me to the River, which he'll tell you more about later.
First, thank you, Alla, first of all, for asking me to be on this distinguished panel. And it's my honor. I'm a co-founder and generally project director of an international artists collective. We currently have about 24 members representing about 17 countries. And we stage projects around the world and in the United States that essentially has a couple of components. We have an exhibition. We invite artists from that area, region, where we're having a project to participate in the exhibition and the community project, outreach project with us. And then we'll have the community outreach project, which generally is with marginalized segments of a society, and also that may reflect various diversities in the society. The mission of Tame to the River is really to use a cultural project to bring people together to basically highlight the common humanity in us all and create greater understanding among people of different backgrounds. The organization itself we look upon as really a metaphor of people working together towards a common good, just with the diversity of our membership. And it's very satisfying experience, I think, for all involved. And I hope we're changing the world just a little bit towards peace, but I can't guarantee that.
Our final panelist, Lucian Perkins, is a photographer, a filmmaker, a writer, a world traveler, and an avid observer of contemporary pop culture. While he worked at the Washington Post, he was awarded 2 Pulitzer Prizes for photography. And I'm so happy to welcome our panel here today.
Sure. Thank you, Alla, for having me. As a photographer, and more specifically as a photojournalist, I think what I strive for with my photography is bridge building. I mean, if I could build bridges with my photography, I would be thrilled. And I think what's interesting about photography is that it crosses all cultures and languages. You don't have to speak a culture. I mean, you don't have to speak a language to understand photography. In each photograph, you see the same things in other people that you see in yourself, whether it's love, fear, excitement. All of these things are something that we all share. And, you know, interestingly enough, this year is the 50th anniversary of a photograph taken by Nick. It's called Napalm Girl, and it's a young 9-year-old girl who was horribly burned by napalm. And many people feel that that photograph helped shape and maybe stop the war in Vietnam. It certainly played a role. And I do think photographs can make a difference. Sometimes I think they're like plugging a hole in a dam. They don't necessarily change the world, but I think they can bring movement in one direction. And that's certainly what I strive for as a photographer.
Thank you all for your very thoughtful answers to this question. And we will go on to our next question. which is, do you feel that some form of peace education or some learned understanding that especially focuses on our shared humanity would be essential to building a global culture of peace? And do you see it as a very personal activity, or do you see it going from you into community, into municipalities, into a nation, and then, you know, into the world? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So we'll begin again with Mel and go round robin on our panel.
Thanks again for that question, Alla. As you talk about the role of peace education, I'm especially moved by the new initiative called the UN Academic Impact Platform that has been developed, that comes out of the Office of Disarmament Affairs, which I think is really neat. And this matter of peace education as a new literacy. The focus is on young people. We know that our world is yearning for safety. It's a fundamental human need, is the matter of safety. And safety can take its form in the aspiration for many things. And the way I language it is that the matter of safety is always about one's participation in their human flourishing and their human betterment. And to the extent that these young people, to the extent that we can educate them around this new literacy of peace building, peace making, if we can imbue that as a psychic culture globally, is the extent to which I think we have a pathway to a better future. And the language of securing our common future, which are 10 principles that come out of this academic impact platform, I think is really exciting. As a student of these matters, I'm interested in learning more, learning how to articulate it more, learning how to advocate for it more, and to imbue more of the students that I teach, or the people that I commune with in this matter. I think it would benefit all of us across the vertical of age, intergenerationally, and across the ethnocultural spectrum of our human family.
Sarah, would you like to continue?
Yes, and again, thank you for the question and having me on the panel. I definitely think we should explore diverse opportunities for building on our similarities and addressing our differences in culturally sensitive ways. And this can be, starting from grassroots levels and volunteer efforts, all the way to international private and public partnerships. We can start with our direct family and caregivers, and later branch out to our teachers, our co-workers, and bosses. I think besides the actual classroom, if you will, museums are a wonderful resource for peace building and peace education, as are places of worship, artist residencies, going back to the visual arts. Going back to my foreign service childhood, I attended the International French School in Ankara, Turkey, when my dad was stationed at the embassy there. And I spent the first 4 years of school playing and learning with the kids, basically, of other foreign service officers representing countries that we technically, for example, were at war with. It was the Cold War, but nonetheless, we all figured it out, whether it was in the classroom or the playground. And And I think it's really important to, as I just said, start at an early age. And the first class I had every day at the French school was manners, and manners in a broad sense. It was, how to, basically it was conflict resolution, French style. And I think that has really, really made a mark in my life.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Richard, Dana, would you continue, please?
Yes, I'd like to address this question more, not specifically about peace education, but just education in general. And I think that should begin very much as a child is raised. And I think one of the absolute critical aspects of raising human beings who then become proponents of peace is often found in religion. For me, it's just the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And I think what that bespeaks is empathy towards other people, the development of that. And I think that in a good education through the humanities, you really are finding a lot of what can essentially turn into the creation of an individual that is peace oriented. I mean, you are finding in literature, in art, in history, everything you need to know about what is good in human behavior and what is bad in human behavior, and in reflecting on that, how to be a better person that is living one's life, avoiding conflict, promoting understanding among people, and being empathetic to people. And so that's a bit of a generalized answer, but to me, I think that is really the basis that would form any movement, any increase in the peace quota in the world. I think, in a sense, the necessary components have already been discovered. It's just essentially focusing on them, which is educating human beings how to be better human beings towards other human beings, and start at the personal, go to the community, go to the nation, go to the world. The end.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And now, Lucian, would you like to contribute to this conversation?
I go back to the concept of bridge building. And I think each one of us has our own way to build bridges. And to give you an example, not long after the fall of the Soviet Union, I helped start a photography organization in Russia, the former Soviet Union, to work with their photographers and introduce them to photographers from the West and from Asia, primarily because they were extremely talented, and I wanted, hopefully, for the photography communities in other countries to realize that they didn't have to send a photographer to Russia or to Ukraine. There were photographers already there. But the most important thing that this did, I think, was build a community, international community of photographers that became friends and developed their own mutual understanding of each other. And, today, sadly, Russia is at war with Ukraine, and it's who would dream? I would have never dreamed when I started this organization that this would happen again. And I know many of the Russian photographers feel the same way. But the good news is that we're all communicating and doing our best in whatever role we have to hopefully stop this war. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's like putting that finger in your dike, in the dike. You know, we can't just snap our fingers and the war and everything else goes away. We can only do the best we can and try to bring in as many people through this commonality of bridge building to make this a better world.
Thank you, Lucian. Your answer is a segue really into the next question, and I want to ask each of the panelists, and we'll actually begin in reverse order, and I'll ask Lucian to answer first, and it's a wonderful segue into what he just said, and then we'll go to Richard, and then to Sarah, and then to Mel. Was there a moment or a project that showed you how you could be an agent of positive change and a bridge builder and an educator by your own example? Lucian, please.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. It's funny, I was speaking at a conference. It wasn't a conference, but it was a exhibition last weekend, and one of the people I was working with said that a photograph that I had taken in Bosnia motivated her to start working with a former Yugoslavian artist. And that surprised me, but at the same time, it was, it shows that if you do something, if little things you do can make a difference. At the same time, literally 2 weeks ago, myself and David Finkel, who's a writer at the Post, we received an email from this now a grown woman who we had photographed in Kosovo 20 years ago. And the photograph of her was she had a big scar on her face because she and her whole family was lined up against a wall and executed. She survived only because the bullet hit her cheek, and she played dead and survived. After that photograph ran, a plastic surgeon in the DC area flew her here, repaired her cheek. And when we talked to her a few weeks ago, she's now happily married and has 4 kids. So little things can make a difference. And sometimes I think a lot of times we never even know the differences that each one of us makes by doing just, in this case, I'm just doing my job, but just doing good things to other people and treating them in a humane way can carry a lot of weight.
Thank you, Lucian. Richard, would you like to continue?
Certainly. I cannot claim in any Taking to the River project for being the person that created some very powerful moment or lasting effect as a result of a project, because it's collective, and I was part of a number of, I think, very positive experiences that were forwarding peace and togetherness. And one that comes to mind was a project we did in Aix-en-Provence at the Musée de Tapisserie. I hope I got that right, Sarah, pronunciation-wise. And the museum, to its credit, was very intrigued by hosting a Take Me to the River project. They had no community outreach aspect to the museum, and we asked them if they had any particular ideas about the project, and they said, well, yes, we'd like you to work with Arabs from the Maghreb who are living in Aix-en-Provence. They're a bit marginalized, and we'd love it if you do a project with them. So we did. and it was a wonderful experience. What in fact Tame to the River is trying to do with working through with a group like Arabs in France is to give them voice, and through an exhibition, because that is the result of all our community projects, is it's artwork created by the community or members of the community and then shown in this case in the museum. So it both gave them a voice and recognition. The opening was one of the largest openings in the history of the museum, so it's influencing French citizens that are coming and experiencing this. But the most touching aspect had to do with the French woman with the museum who was assigned to, if you will, to work with us and with the Arab participants. And she was a wonderful, warm-hearted, extremely competent woman. The night of the opening, very early in it, all of the Arab participants assembled in the classroom that we worked in and asked Magdalene, the French woman, to come in. And they clapped, they thanked her so much for what she did, and they gave her an award. She broke down in tears. She came to me later in an after opening party, saying that she had talked to the director of the museum about how important and how meaningful it was for her to do this project. She told me that the museum director decided that henceforth the museum would have community outreach projects and Magdalene would be the director of the outreach projects. And it pretty much close to brought tears to my eyes. It was a seed that we planted that was very concrete. One hopes that the more intangential aspects of it is giving marginalized people a voice and having it been heard by a wide audience is valid, but to actually have something that concrete happen was, for me, very, very touching.
Thank you, Richard. And Sarah, what would you like to contribute?
But I want to go actually just explore a little bit the 15 years where I was a curator for the Office of Art and Embassies. This is it became part of the State Department under President Kennedy as a way to engage our core values and share them through the visual arts with peoples all around the world. And we did this by creating, as curators, we did this by putting together temporary exhibitions in the public spaces of U.S. ambassadors' residences and permanent collections for new embassies, chanceries, and other diplomatic buildings as they were being built. And one of the big highlights, if not the highlight of this period in my life, was sort of administering, but I would also be kind of also creating them as commissions of new artwork. And these commissions were realized by university teams of students, often cross-disciplinary teams of students and faculty. My most recent one was for the new U.S. Embassy in Niamey, Niger. And Niamey, as many of us know, is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's landlocked and it's environmentally endangered because the Sahel Desert keeps coming from the north and there's very little water, just a segment of the Niger River that's supposed to give water to all the people that live in this land. And so the partnership that I worked with, that I engaged in, was with Western Carolina University, which is part of the state university systems for the state of North Carolina, a little bit outside of Asheville, for those of you who know where that is in Western Carolina. The partnership was headed by artist and a Master of Fine Arts director, Tom Ashcraft, and he developed a collaborative university curriculum titled Public Practice, where students engaged in all aspects of the project, starting with research, design development, presentation of the actual proposal, then fabrication of the artwork, all the way to installation on site in Niamey, in this case, of the artwork. And they actually went beyond just one. They, in the end, created two. One was an interior piece, a commission artwork that was for the central area on the inside of the building, where people congregated, both embassy staff as well as visitors from either the diplomatic corps or, people that Nigerian residents. And it consisted of 40 very large scale photographic panels, individual panels brought together as a grid. And each panel was, it was created during workshops with students from Western Carolina University, as well as students from University of Niamey, the main university in the capital. And so each one of these photographic panels featured a portrait of one of these participants, as well as a handheld object of personal significance. And we collected oral histories so that as part of, the online extension of the visual of this commission, you can actually read in French and in English why they chose these objects. And the other one was a three-part outdoor sculpture that went in the embassy courtyard. It's called Salt, Water, Millet, and it 3 cast bronze sculptures, and they addressed the essential food sources for Niger, as well as the issues of sustainability. And I think that is one example, going back to what Lucian said, of doing my job, but it was so rewarding, and to be able to participate in these workshops and see the effects of US and Nigerian students. They figured it out, even if they couldn't speak the language. They were dancing and doing other kinds of exchanges.
Thank you, Sarah. And Mel, would you like to conclude this particular round?
Indeed, I would. And I must say that I've been in the company of each of the other participants on the panel. I don't know Lucian as well, but would like to get to know him better. But I would enjoy the benefit of just being in conversation with all of you at some time. The church where I was a staffer, actually the administrator of the church from 2002, had this body of artwork that was sent back to them because of a requite of a gift that the church had sent to a bombed out school in Hiroshima that was sent in 1946. The work was done in 1947. It toured the United States. It came, this artwork that done by these children, 48 pieces of this artwork. It was actually 96. Some went to Hawaii, some came back to Washington. They came back to Washington, D.C., toured under the aegis of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and it was then called the Department of War, but the Defense Department. They came back to the church, sat in a closet for 50 years, but in 2002, I was introduced to them as a staffer, as the number 2 in the church. lay minister, lay staff of the church. When these Japanese people came to the church to look at them, and when I presented them on our library table, there was such reverence given to them. Now, that body of work sat in a closet for 50 years. But in my work at the church, I had the opportunity and benefit of creating ministry around them at the church. And we had them conserved. They have been exhibited across the country, from California through Ithaca, New York, New Hampshire, Princeton, Minneapolis, the Katzen, the Krieger, and now selections are going to be exhibited at the Phillips collection starting in August. The big thing was that I had the opportunity to take many of them back. We discovered who those artists were 65 years later, took them back to the Hankawa Elementary School to exhibit them with artists that we found, and had an exhibition. I commissioned or recommissioned at the church enhanced reproductions and gifted back to the Hankawa School where they were created, so that they can have a full exhibition, for permanent exhibition, of these images at the Hankawa Elementary School. So this is a matter of great pride for me to be associated with on the curatorial team for this. It's as a part of my own personal activism, given that we exhibit them. And in this instance, they're going to be married to Jacob Lawrence's work called the Hiroshima series. And it's an opportunity to educate audiences that come to the Phillips, but there's going to be other programming, both at the church and outside of the church, with universities, to kind of help in this matter of educating around the implications of Hiroshima, Nagasaki. What does that mean for seeking a world without the threat of nuclear weapons? So it's aspirational, of course, but this is the work that I'm called to do, and I seek to understand better the work that each of you do as well, because I think it's also very important. I'm honored to be on this panel.
Thank you, Mel. We have one final question, to which I ask, a brief response from each of you, a sentence or two in terms of how you respond to this idea. Do you feel that learning peace building skills through art and culture can help build a safer, kinder, and more peaceful world? And are you willing to keep trying for the sake of our shared humanity? And just let's go in a round robin, just a few sentences from each of you. Mel, would you begin?
Surely. I'm a substitute teacher at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and I also sit on the Dean's Council at the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace. So I've got the vertical of being associated with educating, and it's my fervent hope that my engagement with younger people in this quest for finding our better and higher selves will realize itself in people who will impact others to find their better and higher selves as well. Thank
you. Sarah?
Well, I'm going to say absolutely yes to both of those questions you posed, Alla. I think in terms of how do you get there, I think direct experience, one-on-one, being able to see the person you're interacting with builds trust, like right on the spot. You can sniff it out and develop it. But, one of the silver linings of the pandemic has taught us that sometimes virtually is a good complement, not necessarily a substitute, but it is another way. And, being able to connect virtually allows us to connect with people from the other side of the planet without getting on a plane. And I think that's a very important aspect of how do we get there. And, I'm just going to sort of summarize my whole attitude and beliefs about art and the role of art in peace building. I think that art gets us to reflect and it can get us to think about problem solving and critical thinking in new ways. And so we get to go outside of ourselves through the work that artists, and sometimes if I'm lucky, I do as a curator, as an agent of change. And as I said before, I really believe that art can act as a healing bridge between peoples and once again, build critical thinking, which I think is super important now as more and more lies and fears are sown. That, one thing that education can do, and art is one form of education, is get us to think for ourselves and act responsibly.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Richard, would you like to continue?
Certainly, I'm all for peace. I'm all for peace building. And as I said earlier, I think courses, part of educational curricula that directly addresses steps towards peace, conflict resolution are great, but I think also it should be looked at in a little more holistic matter, which is just how people choose to live their lives and how they treat other human beings, which hopefully is respect and empathy and sympathy. And I, flawed person and sinner that I am, I do try to live a bit by that credo. Taking to the river actually I am in the midst of responding to a request that Take Me to the River submit a proposal to the State Department that would, even as the request for proposal from the State Department indicates the abhorrence with which the State Department and the US government holds Putin and the Putin's increasingly totalitarian regime is doing in Ukraine, to do a project with Russian artists, bringing them over here and working with them and educating them in American values, hope for American values in terms of consensus building, democracy, respect for diversity. It's a complicated subject, but I have to say that I think we're taking a deep breath and realizing that one of the difficulties with achieving peace is that you can have a representative of a certain culture, nation, group of people, and how that person or people act is representative of all those people. And that's really where serious prejudice is built and serious antipathy between people occurs, is not looking at the individual, but looking at people as part of some general, representing some sort of general ethos that may not be a particularly good moral ethos. And it's essentially always then a quest to look for the humanity in everybody. And we'll see what happens with that and whether or not we get the grant. And If so, I invite you all to what the project is going to be. We're going to be working with, if it works, with Pyramid Atlantic, which some of you may know of, and create work together. So, peace.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard. And Lucian, what are your thoughts?
I think we certainly have an obligation towards help making this a better world, whether it's peace, bridge building, or whatever. You know, the good news, bad news is we can start right here at home. We have this red and blue racial, cultural divide that is every bit as dangerous to peace as anything else in the world. And we can certainly start with that by doing bridge building at home. And as I'm sure everybody here, all of you and the listeners know, that's a difficult task, just getting that done here. So that's certainly a good place to start, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Lucian. As a moderator, I just want to make a few closing remarks that are, you know, the conclusions of our panel. In essence, I feel our panel has expressed specific ways that they have engaged in bridge building, peacemaking, peace building, in the sense of addressing our shared humanity, in the sense of expressing respect toward other cultures, putting aside differences and working with deep, positive human values like empathy and respect and human dignity. And so I feel that working in the field of art and culture is a rich place for us to plant seeds and to harvest peace in the future, because there's something intrinsic in the whole realm of art and culture that aspires to communicate, aspires in some ways, intentionally or not, to educate. And if history is the narrative and the story of mankind, then arts and culture is its expression. And in all the arts that humankind has found expression, these are the ways that people in every art form have been able to express their humanity, their outrage, their love of a life, of beauty, of whatever is sacred to them, whatever horrifies them. So this is our vehicle of human expression. And I personally feel that there is a great future for art education as such in the entire area of the arts and culture. And so I really want to thank all of you so very much for taking the time to prepare your remarks and to participate in this panel. It means so much to all of us who have organized this virtual conference that will take place on September 20th, 2022. So thank you again. And I hope that we get a chance to actually continue this conversation in person together. Thank you so much.